Hello, I'm Sahil.
And I'm Rupal. We're currently seniors in the engineering honors program. I majored in computer science and did a math minor.
I majored in computer science and aerospace engineering with also a math minor.
And we're going to be talking about what we did for our capstone project. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And
So
there we
our
go.
project is called the Collaborative Lab for Advancing Work in Space, or CLAWS.
So we already introduced yourself, but here's a fun picture of us testing our system in NASA. So the motivation behind the clause group and what we did was that current human space exploration technologies are outdated. So for example, in these images, we have cup checklists, which are basically tiny books with everything an astronaut needs to know during their mission strapped to their wrist, and that's what they use to do their activities. So our goal was to ease the load for lunar astronauts, and not just lunar astronauts, but astronauts in general, and so they can be using these augmented reality displays and have their hands free to do their tasks. And as you can see in these images, NASA is already making use of these AR technologies.
So when we were recruiting for the team, we always wanted to make sure that we have a collaborative and interdisciplinary approach because the work that we're doing requires people of all skills. We have hardware work, we have software work. We're also making sure that this program is accessible for all because we're designing for humans at the end of the day, and we need to make sure that the UI and the user experience is really good so that astronauts that are doing a lot of work can use this comfortably. In terms of our team dynamics, we made sure that we had weekly check-in meetings where people would talk about the work that's being done, what work they're planning on doing for the next week, and what challenges that they're facing so that we could make sure that any issues could get resolved very quickly. We also had multiple work sessions every week where people could work on their own parts of the project as well as working together to make sure that we get the work done. Originally, this was all done in person, but now we are transitioning to Hangouts and Zoom as we deal with the COVID-19 situation. So we took a modular approach to the software that we implemented because this allowed us to make sure that the large code base remained organized while also making sure that we had tasks that could be parallelized. This allowed us to make sure that our large team of people all had work to do so that people were not blocking each other in terms of sequential tasks.
We also had a mission control center, and this was basically a web server that had a lot of information about not just the mission the astronaut was doing, but also information about the astronauts themselves. And so as you can see, for some examples, we have a section on the website for viewing the map and different waypoints that the astronauts are going to, and also uploading new mission tasks if the need arises. So moving on to more of the AR side. So the first year, what we did was this project called Modernizing EVAs for ISS astronauts. And this was our solution to a NASA solicitation for using AR for astronauts on the ISS. So this was the mock-up of our UI. As you can see on the left side, we have a task panel, which is where the mission tasks were displayed along with a progress bar. There's a QR reader, and this was used for navigation on the ISS because there's handlebars that the astronauts grab onto to move on to places, and each of these handlebars would have a QR code. And we also had a mission clock on the top right, which is what that rectangle is for. And the biggest panel was for health information, and this had the biometrics for the astronaut. And we labeled these using different colors. So green was good, red was bad, and we also had icons. So these are just a bunch of pictures of our time at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We had the opportunity to present our solution and design to a lot of NASA professionals, and we also got to test with flight controllers and EVA specialists, and we learned a lot and gained a lot of good experience. And we also had a chance to just have fun.
So moving forward onto the work that was done this year, we wanted to take some of the experiences and lessons that we learned while working on MISA and improve upon them, while also adapting to NASA's changing priorities as NASA looks to the Artemis missions, which will land people on the moon. And that's why we developed the AR toolkit for lunar astronauts and scientists. So Atlas focuses on navigational guidance and geological sampling procedures. This is incredibly important because on the moon, we no longer are working in the vicinity of a small area like we were on the ISS. Astronauts will need to be able to traverse large amounts of area where QR codes are just simply not enough to provide astronauts information on where they are. We need a full-scale navigation system that allows astronauts to see their position with regards to other known landmarks and how to get between them. Additionally, we also need to work on geological sampling procedures because a lot of the science that will be done involves looking at samples that are collected and analyzing them and then taking them home to be studied extensively. Additionally, we wanted to expand on our user interface and user testing. This was something that we really wanted to focus on in the form of human-in-the-loop testing, and we did work such as creating user quizzes that allowed the user to talk about how hard it was to do certain tasks, and this would allow us to determine what parts of our project need to be enhanced.
So moving on to other extensions of this Atlas project. So both Saul and I have had a focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning and computer vision throughout our studies in computer science at the University of Michigan. And so we wanted to leverage what we learned and incorporate that into this project. So one way we did that was with a voice assistant. So our conversational AI voice assistant kind of follows this general flow. We focused first on biometrics and then navigation. So with our assistants, you can request different things such as your heart rate, and you can also ask it to move to a different location. So here's a sample conversation on how that might go. You can ask, what is my heart rate? VEGA will reply with what your heart rate is. You can also ask VEGA if there's any warnings that have been detected. And lastly, for the navigation component, if you know you have to go somewhere that's 65 minutes away, VEGA can tell you if the supplies you currently have are sufficient for you to travel that much.
So like Rupal mentioned, we did have a focus on AI and CV. So another project that we were working on was the Rock Identification and Geological Evaluation, or RIGEL, and this is a computer vision program that's designed to detect rocks and hazards in the lunar landscape. This is incredibly important because the lunar landscape has a lighting environment that makes it very hard for humans and in fact cameras and machines to determine how far objects are and gauging other interesting characteristics of the environment. So the idea is that we have a computer vision program that allows astronauts to detect rocks and hazards along with determining how far away landmarks are so that they don't have to worry about missing them or misjudging distances. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening. We'll now take a few questions. So question one, what was our inspiration for this project?
So when we started the clause group and the projects that we proposed, a lot of the motivation came behind our passion for both space exploration and what we were studying in computer science and the intersection of those two things. And a lot of the opportunities that we found that were already present on campus were more related to hardware. So like, for example, embedded programming, which is really cool and lots of exciting research going on there. But as we've talked about, we're more interested in like machine learning algorithms and computer vision. So we wanted to create a space where projects focused on that and applying those technologies to human space exploration can be explored. And that's how the group clause was formed. We started off with the NASA suits solicitation, which was using AR for ISS astronauts. And from there, we just kind of branched off into whatever we wanted to work on. So the second question was, what unexpected hurdles we faced during this project?
So after our first year, we wanted to expand on our success, and we started recruiting to fill in some of the knowledge gaps, along with making sure that our team could grow so that we could actually accomplish the large goals that we had set in place. With this came rapid expansion of the team, and we realized very quickly that just having more members wasn't necessarily a good thing by itself. We needed to have the infrastructure to be able to support these members so that they could get their work done. And it turns out that our infrastructure was not ready for this rapid expansion. So there was a lot of time that it took to make sure that every single person had a task that was contributing in some way and making sure that we could handle having that many people a part of the team. So our third question, we've accomplished a lot over the past 2 years. What plans do we have looking into the future now?
So I guess as we mentioned earlier, with the human in the loop testing, because of the pandemic, that was cut short. So that's definitely something that's going to be carried on into the next school year. Looking forward, we hope to do actual in-person user testing for our system and making sure it's robust that way. But also we talked about a little with the voice assistant VEGA and the computer vision project Rigel. We want those, there's a lot of room for growth for both of those, and we'd like to see those go in their own directions with either the new team members or existing team members that we have. So that concludes the questions we had. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed hearing about our project.